I want to welcome everyone to Chassidus from Misnagdim, which meets every Thursday night at 9:15 at Kang Svard, 1575 Coney Island Avenue between L&M and Brooklyn. And I want to thank the very worthy organization, TorahAnytime.com, for making these shiurim available to those who cannot come in person. May the Rabbi Shalom send continued and increased hatzlacha for all your efforts to disseminate thousands of shiurim, Torah, to people who want to get it all over the world. The schutz of our limud Torah in this year should be l'kaim banu chachmei Yisrael. There are many great Talmidei Chachamim, Gedolei Yisrael, who need a refuah shleima. They should have a refuah shleima b'sei shar Chayil Yisrael. Amen. Okay. For tonight's learning, I chose a shtickle from a late 20th century Hasidic master. And I think it's very significant for a number of reasons. We're going to be learning from the Be'er Moshe, from the Azar of Rabbi. Different people pronounce it different ways. You know, people have a tendency sometimes to look at Chassidus as a movement and say it's matured, it's ossified, it's about, nowadays it's about institution building. It's not about anymore these great mystical masters, these Torah giants, these giants of Avodah. But in particular, for those of us who are into the limud of the Chassidus, we're the great Svarim. Avodah, we know that there were great Rebbes, Taka institution builders in the 20th century, post-war, who wrote great Svarim, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Satmar Rebbe. But a sefer like Sfas Emes, that transcends, that a lot of people not Gerach Chassidim learn Sfas Emes. Everybody learns B'nai Yisoscha. There are no Dinav Chassidim left. Dinav as a Chassidus that ceased to exist. Those signs of vitality, Chassidus as a movement, as a Mahalach HaMachshava, do we still have it today? And the answer is a resounding yes. And I think two of the greatest examples are the Nesiv Shalom from the Slonim Rebbe and the Sefer that we're going to learn tonight, shtickle from the Azar Rebbe, who didn't build any institutions, has very few Chassidim. I would tend to think there are probably fewer than 100 Azar Rebbe families worldwide. There is an Azar Rebbe today, or Rav Becker, an anacle of his, is still an Azar Rebbe in Bnei Brak. But that's not what it's famous for. That's what it's not. Why it's a name, so to speak, on the map and in the history of Chassidus. So I think it's very, very significant in this ongoing series of Chassidus from Misnagdim to every once in a while see some of the current, if you will, or close to current works of the great minds of the movement. Aleph. There's a couple of Agdamas before we look at the actual piece. Is you're going to see things here from the Azar Rebbe that, again, even though they're written post-war, in the last 50, 60 years, they're really harking back to some of the ideas that are first formulated and first put down in writing by the early great Talmidei Baal Shem. A concept of Kedushas Hazman, when we get to it in the text, I'll explain a little bit more fully, but I think that's first articulated by Rav Levi Yitzchak Berdishever. An idea of Iris and Kalim that you see a lot in the Sefer Mukabalim, the Sefer Chassidus, that Torah is literally Ar, it's literally light, and how to channel the light, and how to concentrate the light. I want to conclude the last preamble again before I give you a handout and we start looking at the text b'fnim. Is Emet HaChacham, an astute social scientist, observed recently that we used to be the Am Segula, and now we're the Am Segulais. Everyone's running for a Segula. A Segula for Panasa, a Segula for malaria, a Segula for hepatitis, a Segula for Shaduchim. Everybody needs a Segula. I saw about a year and a half ago, I discovered a Segula, which sadly I think it's going to end up in the dustbin of history of Segulas. What's it a Segula for? The Dinaver, besides Ryan B'nai Yisoscha, there's many other famous Svarim, Derech Pikudecha. I saw this in Agra de Kala. He has a sefer. And he brings from Friedrich and maybe from the Chidah, I don't remember anymore the source of the Segula. But he says that if somebody is stumped in an Indian and Torah, you've reached your personal taiku. Your Rav isn't there, your Chavrusa isn't there, you can't figure it out for yourself. So as a schooler, to be able to be aimed on the puzzle, you should be misbainin in the Tzuras HaMenorah and the Parsha of the Menorah. That's a person should reflect upon that. Chazal say, "Ha'reitzel hachkem yadrim v'simonech Menorah b'darim." A person who wants to grow wise should, in his davening, direct his tefillas towards the south. V'simonech Menorah b'darim, because the conduit, the hashpah of Chachma in this world came through the Menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, and it was on the southern wall. That's how Ha'reitzel hachkem yadrim. So you see that there's something about the Menorah that helps for Chachmas HaTorah. It's pretty logical. As scholars go, it's a pretty rational one. But why do I say it's relegated to the dustbin of history? Because most of the people who are running for scholars, this is not the thing that's keeping them tossing and turning at night. Oh yeah, I got to know Pshat in the Rashba. I can't figure out this size. That's not what's keeping them up at night. And the people, the Yeshivalite, the Karmelite, who it's not keeping them up at night. What? A school? More Melus B'Torah, more Chazer, more, learn it deeper, learn it better. Look for more Mefarshim. It's beneath me. I should be mismining. I should look for supernatural lights. I'm going to crack this myself. I haven't heard of it enough. That's why I don't understand it. There's a skula that we're going to learn tonight. In a certain sense, the whole shtickle is a skula, but again, a very rational kind of skula, a skula that makes sense. And how to concentrate this light of Kedushas Hazman so that we can maximize the yontif that's about to be ball line all the time. Okay, so without any further ado, I was a little discombobulated in the Pesach rush that I didn't bring the original sefer. I'm also going to learn from a handout tonight. So just take one and pass them along, please. Okay. The Usher Rabbi, besides being brilliant, as we're going to see, was a big yachsin. He was an anacle of the Chayz of Lublin on one side, and for the Arla Shamayim on the other side, Chanshin, Biala, Opala, a lot of big, great Chassidish dynasties that he was a scion of. And he's going to start off with something from, when he says the Rabbi in Lublin, he doesn't mean Rabbi Belager, he means the Chayz of Lublin. But at any rate, the title of Shtickle is on page Reish Nun. He's going on the pasuk of Lamanta Saper. We know that we learn the Haggadah Leila Seder, and by learning the Haggadah, you're fulfilling the mitzvah that's called Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. There's a mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim that's a whole year. There's a mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim that's Nagaya Leil Tasvav, and that's a specific mitzvah that we're Makayim through the Haggadah. So even though it's called Haggadah, which is a little nuance, a difference, the telling, a Sipur is more like kind of recounting, Lashon Svar. We're going to see in a minute something of etymology, was linked in this word of Sipur. Gaidel Mala Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, the unbelievable Mila of telling over something of Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's not that I'm such a big expert on Azher Rav Yichus, but I know the author of Zichron Zeis is the Chayz of Lublin, not Rabbi Belager. Rabbi Sefer. It's called Tyrus Amos. And one of these days we'll learn a shtickle from that also. Parashat Pasuk Zeh. Ki hine shamatim Rav Magim is Lotchev sheyichya. Rav Michal is Lotchev. Sheba oiser shal yirfuah yesh achiyah shal refuah. Saying Torah words brings to the fore what that word means. You're tapping into the kedusha of that word. If you say the word refuah, it brings a refuah. Truth of the matter is that if you're not a Klein Isis, if you're a real Baal Makubal, and you're not a rearrange words, so kol Torah kula shmaisav shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are all kinds of shemas that we're not familiar with. We know the Shem Adnus, the Shem Havaya, Kael, Elakim, Shakai. We know a few names. Shem Hanam Chakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rabban Shalom. But there are all kinds of names, a name of 48 ISIS, of 72 ISIS, all different combinations of names of Hashem that we're totally unaware of. And if you know how to be mitzaref to Shem, it's Kol Torah Kula, it's Shmaisav Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'atayra he ISIS, Torah is composed of ISIS. V'zeh lamanta sapru, v'datem. So, this is the connection between cause and effect. Sipa Yetzias Mitzrayim is Yedias Yetzias Mitzrayim. You want to know Yetzias Mitzrayim? We know it's one of the famous mandates of the Haggadah. How are we supposed to do that? It's very, very difficult. They're not, maybe, in recent Jewish history, recent Jewish experience, people who came out of the Nazi gang and people who came out of the Russian labor camps. So they experienced Galus and Geula. But most generations of Yidden, either they're like the Shklafen, they were like the Jewish slaves in Mitzrayim, or we American fat cats, what do we really know of a Tam Galus? I mean, unfortunately, we don't understand how far Galus we are. But in terms of Yetzias Mitzrayim, Liris Esas, when was I ever enslaved that now I feel liberated? It's not such an easy thing. Zok there, yeah? You want to know Hashem, and you want to know the Geula experience, what it means to go in Mitzrayim, to Saper. You say over Yetzias Mitzrayim. That does it for you. Al Yedei Zeh, through this, Atam Nami, you too, this generation right now, in the year 2012, or Michal Zlotcher was maybe writing in 1812, but our generation right now, Ki Ani Hashem, Vidat you, Vidatem, not the Yodu, Vidatem, you people, second person, you'll know that I'm Hashem. Ki is mashla idei asipur, ba'oisi yishayr shal geula v'atzala u'rechush v'nisim v'naflois. All the elements of this narrative, of this sipur, of this story, geula, hatzala, getting rich, experiencing nisim, experiencing wonders, if you tell it, you'll zap it around. You'll come to a new level of Yediyas Hashem. The makar of this Vart of Mechel Zlotcher is from a Medrash Shechetayv. Lamnatzeich l'davar lehaskir. Kapitel in Tillim starts with those words. Zichron ifloisa shasi imachem b'chalais. Know the wonders that he does with you at all times. V'lagar Yisrael v'asa imahem el b'shul sheyu maskir ifloisa. The Medrash comments that the whole Geula is that we should remember it. The Geula is not just for the Kiddush Shem Shemayim that happened at that second. The Kiddush Shem Shemayim, the Hatzalah of that generation of Yidden physically and Baruchnius that were Memta Shai Tuma. That's not the whole reason for Geulas Mitzrayim. Amar Dovid, Im Kanani Maskire. The whole thing is that we should be masquerade. That's why Hashem did it, is that we should keep on repeating that it happened. I'm writing this kapitel of Tillim. Lamnatzeich l'David. For what purpose? Lahaskir. Elikim la'atzilayni. If I'm masquerade, that itself is the Hatzalah. This is what we find in Isaiah. There is a chayv on every human being, on every banash, to always, l'shtoi means to speak constantly before Hashem, or pursuing nisa b'chol nisan David, and to mefarsim the nisim of all the nisim that he did. Begin the inun milun salkin, because those words go up to Shemayim, v'chol pamalia de la'ela miskanshin, and the whole pamalia shamayla, all the tzvayis of malachim, the bezin shamayla, they all come together. V'chaman line, they see those words, the words become visible. V'ayden kul l'kush b'richu. It's an isarusal l'sata, it's an awakening that begins, a tremor, if you will, that begins here on earth, but it culminates in Shemayim. When we're ma'adet to Hashem for His nisim v'neflois, then the whole Pamal Shemaya does as well. Ubiya Adavar Barachama, not familiar with the Sefer, but it's one of the classic Mefarshim on the Zayar. Ha'inyan, Shamesape b'yitzias Mitzrayim. Okay, before I read it on Achama, so let me just tell you a concept that if in Sefer Chassidus, I think the Maharal might speak about it, 150 years before Chassidus, but Dachsachmer, that the first Sefer that talks about it is Kedushas Levi from the Barditcher. And that's a very, very fundamental idea in Kedushas Azman. When we talk about Mayadim, when we talk about Zman HaKadosh, very, very important thing to remember. I'm going to say over to your side by way of contrast, okay? Secular holidays. When I was a kid growing up, there was Lincoln's birthday, and there was Washington's birthday, there was no such thing as President's Day. Neither was there anything called Martin Luther King Day. Right? They're arbitrary. They come and go. Something new happens, we'll make a new holiday. An efficiency expert tells you that it hits the gross national product the wrong way to take off for two presidents' birthday. Okay, we'll combine them, we'll fuse them together. We'll make a President's Day. Right? Even Reconstructionist Jews, to the best of my knowledge, have never had the idea, you know something, Yom Kippur on a Saturday, it's inconvenient. I can't skip a Shabbos with Sholter. In their case, I can't skip a Shabbos without my afternoon golf match or tennis match. Can't be in temple on Saturday, on Yom Kippur. Comes out on Saturday, so let's move it. Let's make it 3 days later. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, it's kind of redundant. Why don't we fuse it? Why don't we make a middle of the week, in the middle of Aseret Shuvah, we'll make a New Year Day of Atonement. Right? That's essentially what the Goyim did with Washington's birthday and Lincoln's birthday, and they fused it into to make a President's Day. It's more efficient. Right? Nobody would have such a cholim. The fundamental difference being as follows: Goyish holidays, secular holidays, are purely commemorative, and therefore they're purely arbitrary. And if I would want to move Martin Luther King's birthday off of his actual birthday to somewhere in the middle of the year, maybe put it in the middle of Black History Month, the synergy of the month with the day. I don't know. Is it in the middle of Black History Month? I'm ignorant. I don't know.
A month later.
Oh, it's a month later. Okay, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. Not such a terrible idea, right? We can't do that. Not just because it says in the Torah, L'mayit Chayish Aviv, we have a whole complex system. We have to intercalate the lunar cycle with the solar cycle to make sure that everything fuses together, the months are right, that the seasons are right. We can't do that because they're not commemorative. We don't celebrate Pesach today because 4,000 years ago Hebrew slaves left Mitzrayim on Tesvav Nisan. Tesvav Nisan is Mesheshis Yemei Bereshis, is the day of Geula. That's why the Jews left Mitzrayim on that day. It's like the natural seasons. You go skiing in January, and you go surfing in August. You plant in November, October. We live in a non-agrarian society. I don't even know when the planting season is anymore. And then you harvest in May, in June, right? Now you want to be ornery. You want to say that it's August, but I'd like to go snow skiing. Yeah, you can go to the Southern Hemisphere. You can go to a Chilean ski resort, and you can go skiing there, right? Skiing is a wonderful recreation year-round. But for us, in our organizational reality, in our frame of reference, there's a time when it's much easier to do. The rest of the year, you have to really be matriach yourself to do these things. Right? Maybe you can go to the south of the equator, or you can look for surrogates. You can ski down a sand slope instead of down a snowbank. You can look for surrogates, right? As I get this also with values and Kedusha too. Chayris is a good thing all year round. Tshuva is a good thing all year round. Nikima b'seinayim shel Yisrael and shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a wonderful thing all year round. But there are metaphysical seasons that enhance, that help these values. Tshuva is a wonderful thing, but there's no tshuva like the tshuva on Yom Kippur. Nikima b'leivayim shel Yisrael is a wonderful thing, but never like on Purim. Chayris, we're b'nei Chayrin. Gula Asylum, we love Mitzrayim, we're free men forever. But there's a new Gula, there's a special Gula that comes out on Tesvav Nisan. The Eibishter hat reingepflanzt. The same way there are physical seasons, there are metaphysical seasons. Our words for that is Kedushas Hazman. There is a Kedushas Hazman. Because there's a Kedushas Hazman, that's why these historical occurrences had to happen on that day and not on some other day of the year. So Shleit and Kedushas Levi. Now let's see the way he tweaks it here. Ubir adavar hu barachama ha'inyan sha'ametzaper b'tzias Mitzrayim garish l'chadesh oisem ha'oris ha'alyonim shel nizgalu me'oz b'tzias Mitzrayim. Through the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, you activate it. In other words, yeah, there's a rainy season, but sometimes you can see the clouds too. You can help nature along a little bit. Yeah, it's taka the season of Chayris. But you really want to get the iris those lights of Chayrus illuminated, you do it through Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. V'ainu Sipur Anisim L'shon Sapirios. Okay, if I'm reading them right, sapphires. Okay? If I'm a little kid playing outside, it's a hot day, and I want to burn some leaves, I take a magnifying glass, and I can focus the rays of the sun till it gets really hot, to the point where it can combust the leaves. Right? There are oiris of Chayrus that are coming down every Yontif, and the oiris of Chayrus are coming down on the Yontif of Pesach. Right? But if I have a sapir, if I have a sapphire as a precious gemstone that concentrates the light, it makes it that much more powerful, that much more concentrated. Sipur is Meloshan Sapir. The segula of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is it brings about those iris, it concentrates the iris, it sparkles and it shines like a gemstone. That's the union of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Ein Zayah Kaddish. Chalakav of Chesam Al Kosev Hashemayim Misaprim. We say it right. Hashemayim Misaprim Kvarel. The heavens declare the majesty of God. Right? The Zohar teaches it a different way. Hashemayim Misaprim, they shine it forth. They make it lichlik, like a sapphire. Menar and Kazura, the sapir. They're illuminated like the shine, like the splendor of a. Right, one of the Avnei Choshen was Neifech, Saphir, V'Yahalim. Right, the rows of precious gemstones in the Choshes, one of them is Sapir. I think it usually is translated what we call a sapphire. The Noyer the V'Zor Misayfa D'Alma. It shines and it illuminates from one end of the world to the other. Shemamish Meir U'Misaper Oisam Iris. It mamish illuminates and shines and concentrates the light of those lights. Shaita, at that time, Kodesh Kutshabrach called Pamal Dilay, the Eibishter calls together his whole Pamalia, his whole host on high. Zeu Said Kesher HaEcholos Lamalok. The Zayas, I'm a little bit out of my depth over here. I could just touch the words. This is the secret of the binding together of the chambers, the Echolos, the palaces on high. This brings about a yichud, a unity between the shvach that's going on l'mayla and shamayim that's going down here on earth. Umikan, makar l'mashem v'kol v'sham v'anazayu ha'Rabbi Melablin, ki Shabbos Parshas Bai hi b'bchinas Yontav Rishon shel Pesach. This idea of sipur, of just saying the Oisus HaTorah, kol Torah kol Shmai Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the words of the Torah, it hears this precious gemstone capacity to create light and to concentrate light. Yeah. So there's two things. There's Kedushas Hazman, but there's also Kedushas HaTorah. It's a very famous part in the Chayz of Lublin. He said that Parshas Bai is like the beginning of Pesach, Parshas B'Shalach is like Shvi Shal Pesach, and Parshas Yisro is like Shavuos. Well, let's read it inside. The kriya of the words in the Torah can be married. That you can siphon off that Kedushas Hazman even if it's at a different time of the year. By laning Parshas Bai, you're siphoning off, so to speak, those lights that were illuminated by Tziyas Mitzrayim. When every time you make an al nisim and you say Bayam Mahem Bazman Hazeh, right? What's the Bazman Hazeh? If we were like Goyim, and it's just purely commemorative, it's Bayam Mahem, period. It's nice that we're traditional, we observe history. No, it's Bazman Hazeh. Bazman Hazeh, the Zman was going with the first half of the year. We spent a little, the Mechas Chinuch year, we were contemplating the different approaches and what Mitzvah Asayah, Mitzvah Shazman Grama means. Okay? Zman Grama. Bazman Hazeh doesn't mean Bazman Hazeh at this time, in the year 2012. Bazman Hazeh, this time of the year, whether we feel it or not, whether we sense it or not, this time of the year is a season. It's a season for Chayrus, it's a season for the triumph of Chachmas HaTorah over Chachmas Chitzonius, Kamavur B'Svarim, that's what Chanukah is. It's a time for Tshuva, it's a time for Chayrus. Whatever Kedusha Hazman you're celebrating, that's the Zman Hazeh. It happened by Yom Ha'ain. It had to happen by Zman Hazeh, on this calendar date. Because there's this concept called Kedusha Zman. It's not just commemorative. After a person feels that at this moment the nes is being nischadish by him, that taka, when I talk about school for nisim, people looking for niflois, yeshuas, for niflois, yeah? Nice school. Person is looking for nisim. Okay? If you masker the nisim, if you live it, yeah? If you can feel the golus, if you can feel the gula, and you know that the transition from golus to gula came about through the supernatural, through breaking all the laws of nature, through nisim gluyim, and you're misaper that, you tell it and you shine it and you focus it through the prism of a sapphire, so to speak. So you can be zaycha to nisim gluyim that way. Ashayna segula, no? Pretty nice segula. Well, amount to saper shayday oisva nisim tuchel saper b'chol davidah sheyoy lechag neis zeh. Yeah, he's a very beautiful Chassidish taich over here. Well, Lamant Saper said you should tell your children. Lamant Saper, what's the lashon of the pasuk? Lamant Saper b'aznei mincha. You should concentrate the light. You should focus it through that sapphire into the ears of your children. You should shine the light on your children. Mixing a metaphor between vision and hearing, but that's how the Azher Rav is touching it. Lamanta Saper Baznei Bincha means this Indian there was Mavar before from the Aracham and the Zohar. Meloshan Saper for Loshan that precious gemstone. The Nichtav Atzivui Lamanta Saper b'Makas Ar B'Daike Lafishi Keneged Bina Liba L'chviv Nirmas B'Zeh Shasi B'Tzorach Liyas B'Kavanas Alayv. Okay, once again, only because of the maybe illegitimate cheshek on my part of Vayig B'Liba B'Darkei Hashem, I'm going to try to take a stab at what this means. It's mavur in a lot of Sfarim, most succinctly in the Chiddushei Sharim, but a lot of the Sfarim said it. They have said it as well. Asara mi yadeya. Asara ni yadeya. Asara debraya. The ultimate asara in Yiddishkeit is the Aseres HaDibros. But there's several other famous tens in Yiddishkeit too. There's the 10 Makkos. There's a famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, B'asar ma'amaris nivra ha'olam. Ma'aser Bereishis also was with a decalogue, with 10 declarations. Okay? And in Sifrei Chassidus, in Sifrei Kabbalah, there's also something called Eser Sfiris. Yeah? There are 10 Sfiris. Yeah? So, the Chiddushei Sharim says that the 10 Makkos were the bridge from the Asara Mamaris to Aseres HaDibros. The thing that connected the two major Giluyim of Ratzon Hashem, two major revelations of the will of Hashem. Right? The law of gravity, the first law of thermodynamics, law of conservation of mass and energy, it's all Ratzon Hashem. It is that way because God wills it to be that way. That's the way Hashem wants things to be. Yeah? There's another Gilu of Ratzon Hashem. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, don't wear shatnez, sin Shabbos licht. That's also Ratzon Hashem. It's a qualitative difference between the two, which is a shmuz for another time. The qualitative difference between this revelation of Hashem's will and that revelation of Hashem's will. But suffice to say that humanity, by the time of Galus Mitzrayim, had lost their way, and weren't even makim. Moshe Ben comes to Paro, his first reaction is, Mi Hashem Asher Yashmael. There's no Baira. Ha'olam Kadmon, the world's always been here. Okay? Paro said he created himself. I'm a God. But the whole God concept, the creator concept was gone. Why? Because you look at nature, it's an automatic pilot. You think that it's always been this way. But then, K'mavur B'Ramban, also, the Nisim of Mitzrayim, when he's, the words of Ramban, when he's Meshadad the Marachas, when he breaks through all these arbitrary laws that seem to make things look on autopilot, then you guys scratch your head and say, you know something? No. There's someone and somebody standing behind these laws who's been enforcing these laws all the time. And because he can make these laws, he can break these laws too. Oh, such a world is ready to hear Matan Torah. Such a world is ready already for the Gili of Ratzon Hashem, that's called Torah and Mitzvahs. So again, in some Svarim, they even go into Pratius, which Makkah corresponded to which one of the Asar Maimaros, or which one of the Asar Adibros. Okay? So I'm going to take a stab at what he means over here. Okay? Makkah's Arba was the 8th Makkah, correct? Tzach, Adash, Be, was Barat, Achav. Yeah, Arba is number 8. It's only Chayshach and Makkah's Mecharis after Arba. It's number 8. So a lot of Svarim, the Mahalach is not the Mahalach of the Maharal, but a lot of Svarim learn that the 10 Makkahs was a systematic, a backwards undoing of the Asar Maimaros. Yeah, Bereshis Nami Maimari, we think the first of the Maimaros is Hiyar. There's a Chazal that says the very word Bereshis is also a Maimar. The first Maimar, what's the last Makkah? Bechar. Makkah's Becharis. Bereshis corresponds to Bechar. What's the second Maimar? Hiyar. What's the second to the last Makkah? Choshech. Right? The systematic undoing of all this.
Connect to Makkah's Becharis?
Rashis. Kedushas Rashis. It's a Makkah in the Rashis. A Bechar is the first. For a human creator, a Bechar is his first thing.
All right.
Yeah? Okay. So what I think he's saying is this, perhaps. Okay? There are two configurations of the Asar Maimaros. The last 7, I think, is a Divrei Hakel, how to configure, not that Maimaros, excuse me, the 10 spheres. But the first 3, what are called Moichin, so then there's Chabad, Chachma Bina V'das, but also Kechev, Keser Chachma Bina. So in that configuration of Keser Chachma Bina, Bina is number 3. Going in descending order. If you start with the top one, Keser, it's Keser Chachma Bina, and then you start with the Midas, Chesed Gvur Tefes, that's called Yisod Malchus. But the third one is Bina. So if the third one is Bina, the Makkah that's going to correspond to the third one is the third from the last, or the 8th. The 8th Makkah, Arba. Right, working backwards. Becharis, Chayshach, Arba. Working forwards, Keser, Chachma, Bina. So Bina corresponds, it's an educated guess. I'm not sure if that's what he means, but I'm thinking perhaps it doesn't work out with the Chabad configuration, because then Bina is number 2, not number 3. But if you go that the first 3 spheres are Keser, Chachma, Bina, then maybe you can understand what it means when he says that Arba corresponds to Bina. Maybe there's a simple shot them, and Melech Arba, I don't know, but maybe that's what he means here. V'nichtav atzivi hazeh l'manta sapa makas Arba daika. Could have said it by any of the makas. The kol marba l'sab b'tzis ram, whichever makkah, whichever nace you want to concentrate on. We'll talk about the nisim of the Leida of Moshe Rabbeinu, survival of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's also by Yitzis Mitzrayim, right? Why did the Torah choose to give this mitzvah of Tesaper, Dafka, by the Makkah of Arba? Zok Ta'asher Raver, L'fish Yikaneged Bina Liba. Bina has to do with the leiv, with the heart, and the side like leiv lahavin. L'fichach nimmer the shatzipar lias tzarech lias b'kavanas aleiv. The sipar shouldn't be a dry recital. We've read this script, we've read this Megillah 1,000,000 times already, right? It should be with kavanas aleiv. And I think when he says Kavanas Alev, he means with this and Zin and these Yisaitis we've been saying until now, that there's a thing called Kedushas Asman, and that there are iris of liberty and liberation that are shining right now, each and every year, every Pesach, and I have, the Torah gave me an eifin of releasing these lights and of concentrating these lights and making into a laser, so to speak. I think that's the Kavana that he's talking about. Uvazen Navan Asiyam Apasik. Vidatem ki ani avayev loy v'yedu. It's vidatem. It's second person and it's future tense, not v'yedu, present perfect. Shekavana he lost it. It's talking about for future dairis. Shebechol pam shetazabru. Every time you tell over the ma'asav Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Sibur Yitzias Mitzrayim, teidu v'takiru shani Hashem ha'isi imachem ha'isl taiva. You'll connect with me. You'll know that I'm the one who's doing you these taivas. Knowing that Hashem is the source of all taiva, it's not just an abstract theology. Yes, I believe a God exists. An active God, an engaged God, a personal God. He's doing me taivas. That's emunah by Yid. כמו שכתוב בזוהר הקודש, ואומר לפקודה da lahav Yisrael mehemnen b'chol inu nisan v'guvrin da'avlam Mitzrayim. The Zohar says, without this mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, we wouldn't believe it. Nebuch, like so many of our lost brethren out there, it's mythology, it's ahistorical, you know. Every culture has its myths. The Greeks had their heroes. We have a hero, Afalapuma. Right? Kilu, it never happened. No, we have the mitzvah because we're Shomer mitzvahs. And we have a Haggadah every year. And we have a mitzvah, Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's why we're Maminim. This is the mitzvah that gives us the emunah in it. Kivin the other pekuda da b'erklal esavdol nisan v'guvrin. Because they know this mitzvah, b'derklal, that's taka why nisan and ma'aseh gvuras Hashem happens to them. Upirush on the two tzeiris, I'm assuming it's also a commentary on the Zohar. Shebediyah v'emunah hayatoli kol nisan. It's because of Yediyas Hashem, and it's because of Amunas Hashem, even the first time around, even by Mitzrayim. That's how all the nisim came about. Mishum she'ilu yadu es Hashem. If you don't have this idea of Hashem, you're not zeichet to a nes. V'hine, adei amuna zeichem l'idiyah, k'dechsiv, v'erastich li b'amuna. Right? It works both ways. Through yediyah you have amuna, and through amuna you have yediyah. It's a beneficent cycle. V'erastich li b'amuna. Kaviyachol, the Eibishter betroths Klal Yisrael to him with amuna. V'yadata es Hashem, and then you know Hashem. Okay, through Amunah you come to Yediyah. That's the Seder that Pasuk, one of the psukim we say every day when we're binding the three ringeluch around our fingers by a nachas tefillin. Yeah, v'arastichle be'amunah. If you've become u'uris to me with faith, then you come to V'yadata es Hashem. Yeah, believing is knowing. Some people like to say, skeptical, hyper-rationalist people like to say, knowing is believing. And we Yidden say it's the other way around. Believing is knowing. You bind yourself to Hashem with Amunah, v'yadata. Then you'll come to know Him. V'zeh l'manta saper. That's why it says l'manta saper. Right? That brings the Amunah, and the Amunah brings the Yediyah. Then it comes v'yadatam kinei Hashem. Sha'asipur hu bitur l'Amunah. When you tell over Yetzias Mitzrayim, the way an Elach Yid says over Yetzias Mitzrayim, he's not saying Baba Mais. He's not saying mythology. He's not saying folklore. He's reciting history. This happened to us. How do I know? Well, my tata knows. How does my tata know? Because his father told him. Abba, Vasaba. Nobody would lie to me. The famous proof of the Kuzri. This happened. We believe that it happened. Was I eyewitness? It wasn't eyewitness, but I was as good an eyewitness. I believe that it happened. You believe that it happened. Believing is knowing. V'ayidei zeh zoichem l'yediyas Hashem Yisbarach. V'lasad lovei harei nemar. L'yilam do aydishas re'eyu ki kulam yadu oisi l'maktanim v'agdailam will all be Yodei Hashem in Yemaisa Mashiach. V'zeh sham HaKosov, this is what the pasuk in Tehillim means. Chazdei Hashem Ashira l'dar v'dar adiyah munasacha b'fi. I'm going to sing about the Chazdei Hashem, in particular the way he's touching up the pasuk right now, the Chazdei Hashem of the Makkos of Yetzias Mitzrayim. L'dar v'dar, for every generation, idea munasacha b'fi. B'fi, it's not just a muna belev. If I tell over, if there's sipur, if it's verbal, that brings about a muna. Hainu, shal yidei sh'idea munasacha b'fi. By doing it verbally, then ki amarti olam chesed yibaneh. Then I can understand the chesed that builds the whole world. Hivanti, amarti, loshen havana. Shetaklas abri hi chesed v'atava. That's the whole razan d'atra, that's the whole reason why the Rabbi created the world, is to do taivas to us. Uv'zeh novin ma shehiktam hakosav u'lamanta saper l'fnei v'yidatem. It should have said v'yidatem k'nei Hashem. You know that I'm Hashem, and tell it over to your kids. You're putting the horse before the cart. No, you're not putting the horse before the cart. This is the proper sequence. First there's a lamanta saper, and from the Amunah you have the v'yidatem. Omnam, kan gil lanu ki ha'yediyah tluya b'sipur. Yediyah, the Amunah in Hashem that you have in the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, that brings you taka to Yediyah to Advekas in Hashem. Shadiyah Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, Oz v'yidatam kinei Hashem. Well, often everyone should have a Zis and Pesach, Chag Kosher v'Sameach, and we should taka b'zoicha to a time of Kimetzes K'mei Tzram Eren on Flois, and Mohar, it's Deus Hashem Kamayim L'Yom Mechasim. Okay, I just want to say, just remind everybody that obviously next week is the Heistus is Vichas Chametz Thursday night, so we're not going to have a shir. Watch your inbox. We'll resume either the Thursday after Pesach, or perhaps 2 weeks after. Probably the first Thursday. Just watch your inbox. I also want to invite everyone on my behalf. If you're here in the neighborhood, we're having a Shabbos Hagel Drasha here tomorrow at 6 p.m. Everybody's invited to attend. It'll be followed by Mincha and Shal Shudas. Shabbos, excuse me.